So we can get going. So if you just bear with me one moment. Okay. Cool. So I hope that you can all see the spreadsheet, not the spreadsheet, sorry, the presentation in front of us. Just as a way of introduction, my name is Mahum. I'm the resident tax expert for Anna Money, who is hosting this webinar today. The webinar that we're doing today is basically to introduce the new changes to HMRC penalties for late VAT return submission and late VAT payment that will be introduced in January 2023. So the agenda that we'll just quickly run through with you today will be just touching on, obviously, the VAT rules to HMRC penalties. I'll just address what the current rules are that will end at the end of this month, and then introduce the new rules as of January 23, who they apply to, and just go into a little bit more detail about them. And then we can go on to just discussing the impact of the new rules and how we can avoid late submissions and penalties. So just to explore that kind of area and see what's out there to support us and help us in ensuring that we're as tax compliant as possible to the new rules. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for any questions that we have around the rules, how to avoid them. I'll try my best to answer them as much as I can. Okay, so the new rules to the penalties. HMRC are going to be introducing a new penalty system in January 2023, and this will apply to all VAT registered businesses, whether you're registered voluntarily or by VAT obligation. The rules will apply to any business who submit their return for the VAT periods that begin on the 1st of January or after. So for example, if your VAT return period actually started in the 1st of December, for example, this month, and ends at the end of February, that particular VAT return period is not liable to the new rules that begin in January, even though your period ends in or after January. But the following VAT return period that begins within 2023 will be applicable to these new rules. And the new rules also will apply to your VAT returns, even if you're submitting a NIL VAT return. So if you haven't made any trade that particular quarter for whatever reason, and you need to submit a VAT return with 0 in each box, the rules will still apply to you, and you could still be liable for a penalty for late submission. So do bear that in mind. That is really important to make a note of as well. So the current rules, what are the current rules? At the moment, if you miss your VAT return deadline, HMRC log a default onto your account. And once you've defaulted, then you start a 12-month surcharge period. If you default within that surcharge period again, then you are liable to a surcharge on the VAT that you are owing HMRC. So the first default that you make doesn't have any surcharge liable, but the second one you make is when the surcharge can start. And the surcharge is based on your annual turnover, the amount of VAT you owe, and then the surcharge percentage that applies to that particular amount and turnover. So these are the current rules in place. As for the new rules, the new penalty system will work on a points-based system where you'll be allocated 1 late submission point for every VAT return that you submit late. Once you're over your limit for late submissions, you'll then be charged £200 penalty. You'll then be charged an extra £200 penalty for every late submission that you make within that certain period of compliance. The points threshold does vary according to how often you submit your VAT returns. So if we're looking at this table here, we can see that if you submit your VAT return annually, you have a threshold of 2 penalty points, which means that if you submit your VAT return late more than 2 times consecutively, then you will be liable for a £200 penalty charge for that third submission. Similarly, if you are on a submission frequency of quarterly VAT returns, then once you have exceeded the threshold of 4 penalty points, your 5th VAT return that you submit late will incur a penalty charge. Similarly, if you submit 5 late, then you incur a penalty charge for your 6th VAT return. But HMRC do give you the opportunity to be able to reset your points back to 0 under some certain conditions. And the way to do that would be for you to submit all your VAT returns on or before the due date for your period of compliance. So this will be based on your submission frequency. And make sure all your outstanding returns due for that particular for the previous 24 months VAT period has been received by HMRC. So if you can make sure that you do those, then your points will go back to 0, which will then reduce your period of compliance as well. In terms of late payments, if you don't pay your VAT on time, you will be hit with further charges on that as well. So not only will you have a penalty charge liable for late payments if you exceed the penalty threshold for your particular submission frequency, but also if you don't make your payment on time, you'll also be liable for a certain type of penalty as well. That type of penalty on your late VAT payments is dependent on how late it actually is. So how many days overdue is your VAT payment? If your VAT payment is overdue between 1 to 15 days, if you make sure that you do pay the money that you owe HMRC within that time frame, then HMRC will suspend your penalty charge that they are going to intend to issue at 2%. Also, alternatively, if you cannot make that payment within the first 1 to 15 days that it's overdue, then you do have the option to set up a payment plan with HMRC, which will ensure that your penalty charge can also be suspended. So just make sure that if you can't make the payment, you do call up HMRC and arrange that within the first 1 to 15 days that your payment is overdue to make sure that it is suspended. If your payment is overdue for 16 to 30 days, then you'll be charged an extra 2% of VAT on day 15 based on the VAT that you owe HMRC for that particular VAT return. If you are overdue by 31 days or more, then you'll be charged an extra 2% of VAT on day 15 and on day 30. So you'll already have your 2% VAT that you've been issued on 15, and then another one on day 30 that you'll be liable to pay to HMRC as well. And remember that if you also can receive a second penalty, that will be calculated at a daily rate of 4% for the duration of your outstanding balance if you still haven't made that payment to HMRC. So if your payment is still exceeding over 31 days, then another penalty will be issued at 4% for accounting for each day that is later than the 31 days. That will be calculated either when you make the payment or when you make an agreement with HMRC on a payment plan. So I've just got some examples here of late payments, just to make it a bit clearer. So as I was saying, 1 to 15 days overdue. Let's say you owe HMRC £1,000 of VAT. Then if you make sure to pay it within the first 15 days that it's overdue, then the penalty charge will be suspended. If you arrange a payment plan within the 15 days, then you'll be suspended of that penalty payment as well. Then you'll only owe HMRC your outstanding £1,000 based on your VAT return. If it's overdue 16 to 30 days and you originally owed HMRC £1,000 of VAT, you will be issued the 2% charge on top of the £1,000, which will basically make your payment due to HMRC £1,020. Similarly, even if you agree a payment plan within 16 to 30 days of it being overdue, you will also owe it £1,020. So one point that I would like to stress on right now is how great of an opportunity it is that if you are delaying your payment to HMRC because you don't actually have the funds, the best thing that you can do is call up HMRC and arrange a payment plan, because it will still help you in suspending any penalties that could be liable, or any kind of things that you could incur in that way, so long as you arrange something with them within the correct timeframes. Always bear that in mind. Don't get too hesitant that I can't afford it right now, or I'm in a bit of a cash flow issue at the moment, so I'm delaying it, because the option is there, which they've clearly stated as well. So take advantage of it. If you are 31 days or more overdue and you owe £1,000 of VAT, then you will owe a total of £1,040.40. So that will be the 2% that was issued on day 15, which was the £20. And then an extra 2% that was issued on day 30, which it turns out to be £20.40, totaling the £1,040.40. And also bear in mind, on top of that, if you've submitted your VAT return late as well as made the payment late, remember, if you've exceeded your penalty points threshold, then you'll be issued a £200 penalty charge as well. So not only is it important to make sure that you're making your payments on time, or agreeing a payment plan if you can't afford it, but also submitting your VAT return in on time, because there's two ways that you can be issued with a particular type of penalty going forward. You'll also receive the second penalty, as I mentioned, that will be calculated at a daily rate of 4% for the duration of the outstanding balance. So if you exceed 31 days or more of it being overdue, then remember, you'll be issued another penalty on top, where it will be calculated at 4% every single day. So it works in your favor to make sure that you do an arrangement or make the payment on time within those timeframes. And again, that will be calculated when the payment's made, or when you agree a payment plan with them in the first place. Okay, and further on with the new rules, we have late payment interest. So this will be calculated from the day the payment is due to the day that the payment is made in full. The late payment interest will be the Bank of England base rate plus 2.5%, which has been stated in the HMRC guidance on this topic. Okay, and something new that's been introduced is a repayment interest as well. So as of January 2023, HMRC will also introduce an interest on the repayment of VAT that's owed to you by HMRC. So this will be calculated from the day after the date of submission, or the due date, whichever ends up being later. The repayment will run until the date HMRC repaid the VAT to you in full. Repayment interest will be calculated as the Bank of England base rate minus 1%, but the minimum rate of repayment interest will always be 0.5%, even if the repayment interest calculation results in a lower percentage. So for example, if your VAT return is due on the 7th of June, but you submitted it on the 30th of May, and HMRC paid you on the 12th of June, the interest will begin on the 8th of June and end on the 12th of June when HMRC repays you. That's because the 7th of June is obviously the deadline for the VAT return. You submitted it a week before, which is fine, but HMRC won't be liable, or their interest rate period will not begin until obviously it's expected from them, by them. And then continue until they've actually made the payment to you. So just a quick summary on what's actually changed. There's going to be a new points-based system in place from January 2023 for late submissions and late payments. Once you exceed the points threshold, you'll be charged for any VAT returns that you've submitted late after this point threshold. You can bring your points back to 0 if you submit any outstanding VAT returns due dating back to the last 24 months. Late VAT payments will incur a 2% charge on their payment due. There is a time frame within which you can pay your VAT to suspend any penalty payments issued. There's also interest that will be charged on late payments, but HMRC will also be introducing repayment interest that they will incur if they make a repayment late to you as well. Okay, so just going on to how can we avoid late submission penalties? So we can find ways to save time and money. The main reason or factor as to why VAT returns or tax returns generally are submitted late is because we haven't had the time as much as we'd like to prepare them in the first place. And we haven't managed to effectively do this. Search for more secure and efficient ways in preparing your VAT return so that you can save yourself the time and effort in doing it, but have the confidence that your VAT returns have been prepared accurately and in line with tax obligations to make sure that you are avoiding submitting them late and avoiding making obviously the payment late as well. Digitalize your processes with compliance to making tax digital. Digitalization is only the way forward now, the way of the future, especially with HMRC. They have a very big government initiative to ensure that tax is made digital, not only for VAT, as we're seeing in front of us at the moment, but also the intention is to move on to income tax in 2024, beyond that corporation tax, and further on to other taxes after that as well. So if HMRC are making their way towards digitalising each of the processes, it only makes sense for us to do the best that we can to digitalise our processes as well, to make our tax processes and our business processes as efficient and accurate as possible, working in favour of us being compliant to HMRC rules and guidelines as well. Naturally, decreasing the amount of manual intervention in your VAT processes. This will also decrease any potential errors and improve your tax compliance as well. So it's just coming back to digitalization and taking advantage of what options we have out there and features and tools that we can take advantage of to make sure that we are decreasing any risk of tax incompliance and also ensuring that we're following the rules as best as we possibly can. So how can Anna help you avoid late submissions and penalties? So you can use Anna's VAT automated NTD compatible accounting software. What this will do is it will prepare your VAT return figures for you, and it will just prompt you to submit your VAT return when your period ends. So you don't have to make that manual intervention happen in the first place. The actual tool will take responsibility in preparing your VAT returns as accurately as possible for you. All you really need to do in order for that to happen is connect your business bank account or your current account to the Anna tool and connect to HMRC so that later you can make the submission to HMRC as well. Once you've actually connected your business bank account or current account, then what Anna will do is it will categorize all of your business transactions into various different categories to identify it being a taxable transaction that needs to be included into your VAT return, or a type of transaction that should be excluded, and also then beyond that, transactions that are personal transactions that need to be completely excluded as well. And then we'll calculate your VAT return based on those tax rules that it understands. You can review all of your final figures before making any submission. You can make any last minute adjustments if you wish, any kind of last minute amendments if you've made a last minute sale that haven't hit the VAT return yet in your bank account, then you can obviously add that later on if you need. And then you can basically click submit, and Anna will submit the VAT return to HMRC from the software, which is also available on your app or your desktop. So if the reason as to why you are struggling to find the time to sit down and prepare your VAT returns, which can be a very timely job, because the type of business industry you're in means that you're on the road a lot, then Anna does offer its accounting software through an app, which makes things significantly easier. You can just review your VAT returns that's been prepared on your phone and then click submit from there. But alternatively, obviously, if you're more comfortable with using a desktop version in the comfort of a computer or a laptop, then you do have the option to do that as well. Anna will also send you VAT reminders and remind you of any payments due. So then it just comes back to how Anna will help you avoid late submissions and penalties. It's an incredible process and feature, and I would stress for you to have a look at it and see if it works for you. So in conclusion, you don't need to worry about preparing your VAT returns in time. Anna can really manage this for you effectively. You'll get a reminder to submit your VAT return on time and avoid the late filing penalty. This way, you're much more likely to avoid any VAT penalties submitted that can be issued by HMRC. So that was the presentation there. So hopefully, if anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them now. Okay, so I've got some questions here that were processed in or popped forward. So I'll just go ahead and answer them. So one question I have is, how can Anna support a user in preventing late submissions? So sorry, just like I just addressed, the way Anna would do that is by offering its actual automated VAT filing tool. How it works is that you connect your business bank account, it will prepare your VAT return, and you'll get those VAT reminders to submit your VAT return on time. It reminds you of your VAT obligations towards the end of your VAT period when it's ending, but also before the deadline. So remember that obviously your VAT period could end at the end of 1 month, but then after that date, you have 1 month and 7 days to finish preparing your VAT return and then submit it to HMRC. So Anna will basically keep in touch with you to give you a reminder at the end of your VAT period, but also closer to your VAT period submission deadline to make sure that you don't submit your VAT return late. And then if it is that it is overdue, then it will prompt you to remind you that it's overdue as well. Also, we have a business tools page which gives you regular reminders of all of your obligations or kind of any tasks that you have outstanding. So if one of those are your VAT return being due, then it will pop up as a task on your feature as well, just to give you another kind of reminder. So it almost acts like a really good assistant to your business to make sure that you remember what your current tasks are and obligations are, to make sure that you're doing everything promptly and on time. So another question we have is, how much manual intervention is needed using your functions for VAT preparation? If I'm completely honest, it's very minimal, the amount of manual intervention you need. You kind of really don't need much at all. As long as you've connected your business bank account at the start, what Anna will do is it will identify what categories need to be tagged to each type of transaction. It will do that based on obviously the kind of understanding of the information that it's getting from that transaction. So for example, if that transaction in your bank account is a paid in transaction from a particular kind of company, it will naturally assume that maybe that is a sale that you've made. Obviously, naturally at the start of when you're using the tool, the best thing for you to do is to review those transactions and check that it's categorizing it correctly. If you're happy with those and you don't need to amend them, which is commonly the case, then Anna will remember that activity and remember that particular type of transaction, a behavior, and make sure that it follows the same thing in every quarter. But if you do need to make a change, for example, you want to exclude that transaction from the VAT return, then manually you can just make a change to the actual category and select a different one to ensure that the behavior behind that category is actioned accordingly to make sure that your VAT return is accurate as possible. Otherwise, the only manual intervention that I can think of is if you have any last minute kind of calculations that you want to input into your VAT return, then you can do that manually on one of our manual box adjustment features. For example, if you are partially exempt as a business and you separately calculate your partial exemption, or second-hand margin scheme, you're on the second-hand margin scheme and you do your calculation, then you can obviously manually do your calculation and input that information into the tool. That is something that would be manual, but beyond that, everything is calculated automatically. And even something like partial exemption and second-hand margin schemes, you would tend to do that manually anyway to make sure that it's as accurate based on all the information. But otherwise, it's very efficient, it's extremely accurate, and a really great tool. The next question is, how does Anna know which business expenses are claimable for VAT? So each category that exists within Anna's tool already has a behavior based on tax rules behind it. So for example, if you were to select the category for business entertainment for a particular transaction that's been paid for, you've selected business entertainment because you took a client out for dinner and that receipt or that transaction reflects that. Then if you were to select business entertainment, that category automatically will understand that this transaction has a particular tax rule behind it. Business entertainment can't be claimed for VAT. So it would know to exclude it from box 4 of the VAT return to ensure that we're not claiming any VAT on it, but make sure to include it in box 7 of the VAT return as a business expense exclusive of the VAT, so it's recorded accordingly. All of the categories that we have that exist with Anna have been verified by tax experts and developers to ensure that they are accurate based on the tax rules and legislation that HMRC expect us to follow. How accurate is Anna's calculation? That kind of just links in back to the previous question of how the Anna's categories work. That's how accurate it actually is. All of the actions and activity that is automated within Anna's function and tools is all based on tax legislation and guidance from HMRC. So any kind of activity or calculation that has been is automatically created within the tool is there based on tax law and has been verified to be so. So it is extremely accurate. We have a lot of users that use our tools and are very happy with it. If you were to check our Trustpilot, we do have a really good rating on there as well, which reflects how efficient and accurate our functions are. So I would say that it's really accurate. Yeah. So just checking if we have any more questions. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have there. So yeah, if you do come up with anything else later, then please do get in touch through Anna Money's website. You're always welcome to get in touch with us and we can continue asking. Also on any of our YouTube videos, please do leave any comments and likes and so on below, and we'll always be happy to get back to you if anything pops up later. But thanks for joining. I hope that was helpful, and I'm sure we'll do this again very soon.